So, hello guys and welcome to this new video. Today we are going to talk a bit more about stable chunk loading. I made a video about it roughly 2 weeks ago I think, or maybe even longer, and I said tomorrow I'm going to make a video. Well, turns out that tomorrow, so like 10 days ago, I really didn't feel like I had done sufficient research to make that video, and basically things were going a bit slower than I expected them to, and as a result I really didn't feel like I could present a proper video about the subject. However, we're a bit later and we're a bit further and we have learned some more stuff, and now I think it's time to go on. So I apologize for the promise, or well, it wasn't really promise, but the prediction or whatever, which I didn't follow up on, and but here it is, finally. So, this video comes to you in two parts, but both are related to stable chunk loading. So, first of all, I highly suggest you watch the previous video, which I made on the subject. Basically, the idea is we're going to load chunks in such a way that at least command block clocks will execute in them like 20 ticks out of 20. Like, basically, the command block clocks are unaffected by the autosave, which happens every 900 ticks. Now, that is something that was basically the goal in the last video. I will show in this video that actually that's not an adequate goal. Like, you could call this type 1 stable loading. It works for command blocks, but it doesn't work for everything. And there's still a lot of complications, but that will be discussed in the second part of this video. In the first part, well, we're going to talk about something else, but before I can do any of those parts, I think I should present my setup. So, basically what we have is we have this absolute autosave detector. It's 3 chunks away from here. Also, something I should note is that we're currently in the spawn chunks. I messed with my spawn on my test world. So now basically the edge of the spawn chunks goes right from through here, through my AAD of course. It goes over here. This is also a chunk edge. And this basically is right next to the edge. So this is basically like I showed in my last video. If you don't get what these repeaters are doing here, watch my last video. And what do we also have? So basically we have that the output from here goes into a clock. That clock is exactly 45 seconds long using some repeaters. And also we use the same delay to go into that line over here. There's a bit of other stuff going on as well, but I won't discuss everything. A lot of this stuff is just like experiments I did for a bit and then I gave up on because, well, I got my results. And not all these experiments are relevant, so I won't discuss them all. However, we have that, and I should also probably show how the exact loaders exactly work. So let's ignore all of this mess because it's irregular. So over here we have a normal bit of loaders. So we just have instant wire, of course, going along, like in my last video. And basically, as I showed in my last video, you can not only use a repeater, but also whatever it powers to instantly load stuff. The thing is, over here, we are still 1 block away from the chunk border, which is here. However, that's actually good enough because it's redstone and it points this way. It will actually check 2 blocks ahead, and for that we'll load this chunk in that exact tick. So as a result, basically this line right here loads the 1 chunk this way and 1 chunk over there that way, and also 3 chunks in the middle here in that way. As a result, we got a 5 wide strip, which goes on for quite a while. With the current setup, I should probably show, I have 98 chunks if I counted correctly. We currently are not using these loaders. I'll show why, but we're not going to use them for now. So let's quickly show that in action. I should also show, whoops. Over here we have 2 clocks. One is in this chunk over here, and one is in the other chunk over here. Both of these should be loaded permanently. This chunk should be loaded permanently by this line of redstone. The chunk over here should be loaded permanently by this line uploading 2 blocks across, and so on. So with that out of the way, let's quickly finally show you guys something, which is basically that, well, the setup does actually work, like in the last video, but basically we're working with 98 chunks, so I would quickly like to show that. That just works. So yeah, don't mind what I'm doing right now, that's just the way my setup works. It's a bit complicated. So now we wait. It detected the desync, it turned the AAD off. So instead of using the AAD like I did last time with delay, I'm going to use a clock. And I will explain later on why we're using a clock and not just the delay alone. But yeah, so right now basically our first pulse went into our line. And every time a pulse goes into our line, we get a little feedback about what the time is at of these different scoreboards. Spawn is basically just down here, so that's alright. don't worry about spawn chunks, like I have multiple of those clocks set up now. It's almost there again. And normally it should have done 900 ticks. Strange. Well, the first time's always a bit weird, so let's do it a couple more times just to be sure. There we go. So yeah, now it's working consistently. So yeah, both of the loaders are working fine. They're every 900 ticks on spawn are also being processed on these artificially loaded chunks, or at least for the command blocks there. So that's good. Now, as you can tell, that's working consistently. I'm going to shut this down, and I'm going to show you a rather strange observation, at least if you don't read the code. It's going to be rather strange, I would assume. So, what we're going to do is we are going to go all the way to the end, and I should probably use tick speed for this as well. And we are going to turn that on, and we're going to go all the way back. So now the loaders load 101 chunks. And we are going to do the same experiment, and we will notice something. So let's do this. So we got a thing, a signal from our AAD. So let's quickly go through a couple of these to make sure that our results aren't being affected like they are at the beginning normally. And as you can tell, the test 5 is working fine, but the test 6 isn't. And I didn't probably show this a second ago, but the test 6 was actually the one which was on the outer chunk. Like test 6 was over there, and test 5 was over there. Doesn't really matter though. It basically just worth noting that this one chunk for some reason behaves oddly, even though all the other chunks, I'm not going to show that, but I think it's fair to assume that all other chunks, including test 5, are working fine. So why is that? Why is it different for 101 chunks? Well, let me introduce you to the 100 chunk unloading limit. The way overload chunk unloading and also loading in part works is that when chunks are unloaded, they are really just queued for unloading, and then this object is called at some point during every tick, and it actually gets up to 100 chunks from this queue, and it actually unloads them. And that's what we see happen. Like, as far as I know, the actual unloading is what causes weird results with our redstone and such. Just queuing the chunks doesn't do anything, as far as I'm aware. So basically what's going on here is that this chunk in particular, the test 6 chunk, is the chunk which is picked last from the queue, and as a result, it isn't picked in the first tick when it is. In the first tick, it will basically unload the 100 first chunks it picks. It's kind of a random process. Well, it's not really random, but I'm not going to get into the details. But it's not easy to figure out either. I use a program for it. But basically, this just happens to be the last chunk, which is picked in order, and because it only picks 100 chunks per tick, and this is the 101st chunk, it will not pick this one in the first tick. As a result, basically this chunk will be loaded using the normal loader, but it doesn't matter because it's still loaded. It didn't get unloaded during that tick. However, the next tick, it will get unloaded, and the repeater won't do anything anymore because it triggered the tick before. And basically, it won't load until the repeater turns off again, which is like roughly 8 ticks later. And that's why it is getting loaded, but just not constantly. So, how do we fix this? Well, it's actually not that hard at all. What we do is we create a second loader line, and that should be good. And that goes up here. And using this, we can basically just... so first of all, I'm going to quickly do this. This is just to make sure it unloads and saves all chunks. So we're going to do this again. And we're going to wait for a signal, and then it's going to go around again a couple of times. And what we should notice normally is that this time our test 6 chunk is going to stay loaded permanently. So let's wait for a bit. I mean, I tried this yesterday. Yeah, there we go. So as you can tell, it does work fine now for test 6. And all we just did up there is use a second loader line, which, well, didn't show you, but basically I used some piston delays to get this line triggers one game tick after this line. And we just use the same thing with repeaters and stuff. I think I can show you. I think I'm fine with the setups for now, so let's quickly... Alright, So yeah, over here, basically this one triggers one game tick after this one down there. And it basically, it just goes all the way over here, and it goes to this single chunk, which we need to keep loaded. And that works. So yeah, pretty nice. So you can basically get, if for the command blockers out there, you can also use this yourself, I guess, if you want to do some stuff with artificial loading. But I haven't really heard of command blockers having that many issues with loading. So, and then maybe better alternatives using like NAN arrows and just like putting your spawn chunks at 0, 0 and such. So this may be not the best choice for command block people, but for half-tech it's also interesting. However, the thing this brings us to the second part of this video. Oh yeah, I forgot to say something. I was going to explain why we use a clock and not the autosave detector itself anymore, like with a delay. Well, some of you may already have guessed the answer, which is that the absolute autosave detector is absolute in the sense that the rising edge, not even the falling edge, but the rising edge happens every 900 ticks under normal circumstances. Now, when I designed this thing, I didn't even know about the 100 chunk unloading limit. But what I did notice is that let's say you were loading 300 chunks, then this thing won't necessarily trigger the first tick anymore, because it really depends on when this particular chunk will get unloaded. And as a result, basically, as soon as you surpass the 100 chunk unloading limit, your AADs aren't really reliable. It depends a bit on the way the ordering of the chunks works. And as a result, I don't use the signal itself at that point anymore. I first unload everything so that there are under 100 artificially loaded chunks. Then the AAD is reliable. I save that signal in a clock in the spawn chunks, or like permanently loaded chunks at least. And that way we are sure that our signal is still correct, even though the AAD may be unreliable at that point. So that's the idea behind the clock. Now let's get into the second part of this video, because it's getting pretty long already. I have a sun dispenser over here. I showed this one in my second last video, if I'm not mistaken. So pretty simple setup normally. Let me connect this over here. So yeah, I hope I can get the setup working, because I didn't test it right before the video. I just hoped it would work. Anyway, normally, basically, you would basically hope after seeing my last video that, oh look, we just stably load chunks, and then we can put whatever redstone we want in there, and we can just act like it's constantly loaded, right? Well, that's what I hoped, but apparently what works for command blocks doesn't work for everything. And I have noticed that repeaters can lag a tick behind, pistons can like extend blocks when they shouldn't, and sand is just completely unpredictable. So it turns out that stable loading is, or at least type 1 stable loading really isn't that much like sunshine and rainbows or whatever. So over here I have a little setup. I think I showed this last time as well. Normally sand will fall through the torches down here, and it will trigger these blocks which remove the sand. And over here, it will only fall here when the chunk is a lazy chunk, so that the sand, maybe I'll link to a Spire's video about this, how sand behaves in lazy chunks. Anyway, this is just a quick way to detect whether sand is falling normally or instantly. Yeah, I think apart from that, it's all pretty normal. Basically, we just use the instant line to initialize our clock. This looks a bit weird, but basically we're initializing the clock and also cutting off the previous signal, because the repeater starts lagging behind and stuff. This is basically what held back the last video for a decent portion. I worked on this setup, I think, for 5 days or something. Either way, a long time, tweaking it and trying to get it working. And in the end, I managed to get a setup working where every 3 game ticks, sand would fall to one of these positions and trigger the command block. I should probably show that. Basically, whenever... Oh, I need to use sand. Whenever sand falls into one of these positions, you get this chat message. And I managed to get it working so that I got one of those messages every 3 game ticks, even across the autosave. In fact, I got a double one at some point, but that's a weird behavior. I don't know exactly how it works, but for a second I thought that I managed to execute the command block twice in a tick, which would be nice, but unfortunately, like I had doubts about it from the beginning, actually, but I hoped that was what's going on, but in fact it doesn't look like that's what's going on. But that's subject for a new video. It's already getting pretty long here. So I think I connected it again, so I can try to do this. However, I'm going to make the setup a bit simpler. So we're going to not use the top line, and we're also not going to use this line. These are the only chunks we need to get the dispenser working. Oh yeah, something we should take from the previous video though, which I didn't mention, is that the sand dispenser does seem to work, as in it kind of the supporting chunks which support the sand to be an anti-processing chunk and that kind of stuff. Those seem to be able to work if they're stably loaded using type 1 stable loading. However, the actual machinery itself must be loaded in a higher level or like a more permanent way or whatever. But let's just show what's going on here. So I'm going to do this, and I hope it will work. Like normally it should initialize the clock and it will spam a bunch of messages in chat. Yeah, as you can tell, sand landed constantly. So basically we're gonna wait until the signal goes over there, and now we're going to stop and we're going to slow it down in a second. So as you can tell right here, we have one fell at 28, 31 again. It's pretty weird, but again, it's subject for another video. Anyway, at least 1 cent, so that's working. 34, 37, 40, 43, 46, 49, 52, 56, 59, 61, and so forth and so forth. Now, as you can tell, it's working fine. I even need to do some crazy stuff to make sure that there wouldn't be sand missing over here. Like, this took me a long time. It was very frustrating because not a lot of it made sense. It was mostly just trial and error. Now, as I already said, this part is in spawn chunks, so I can just go away myself if I want to. And I will do that just to show you, because I will need to show you some crazy stuff. And I would first show that for some reason it works fine when I'm far away. So let's go a bit away. We're pretty far away, I think that's fair to say. Now we're gonna go for the next one. Okay, let's see if we can get back to it. So as you can tell right here, it's working fine. 28, 31, 34, 37, 40, 43, 46, 49, 52, and so on. As far as I know, there's no multiples of 3 missing here. So that seems to be working fine. Now let's do the same test when we are not far away in the overworld, but when we are in the end. And I will show you what's going on and why this research is incredibly frustrating. So we're basically just going to go into the end. It detected my arrival. That's a little machine over here doing that. Oh, as you can tell, it's still going, and I should probably show that in fact it didn't miss any. So that's still working fine. 38, 31, 34, 37, 40, 43, 46, 49, and so on and so forth. So let's just continue, and we're going to have to wait for a bit because it is a pretty long-winded process. I may just use this for it and see what happens. It's still going right now. Like, it's a bit unreliable. Oh, there we go. So as you can tell, the clock of the sand dispenser is still working, but for some reason it's not dispensing any sand anymore. So probably something broke. And I typically get this after a couple of cycles in the end, and I never get this in the overworld. So don't ask me what's happening there. And at some point I'm pretty sure even the clock should stop, but I'm not entirely sure. There we go. The clock also stopped. And the reason that happens is for some reason one of the instant repeaters in the instant repeater line decides to like trigger like it got a 1-tick pulse or something, like the one in front here. And don't ask me how that works, but yeah. Anyway, over here, I'm gonna turn this off. So the clock was still working, and for some reason, once we get close, the sand is also working again. So I just don't get what's going on, and frankly, okay, we should probably first turn the clock off over here, and then try to deal with the sand. So let's quickly remove the signal. Yeah, that is a real high-level redstone technique, basically breaking repeaters and replacing them. Yeah, we could use a fancy circuit, but oh well. Anyway, so I think I repaired the machine mostly, but as you can tell, it was in a weird state, which for some reason only occurs when you're in the end. So this is what I would like to call, I guess, more chunk loading complications. We had those back in the summer, the more remote pushing complications, and well, I do not know what's going on here, but frankly, I'm tired of it. So, as when it gets to the sound farm which I'm trying to design, I'm going to try to rely on an even more fundamental principle, which maybe even that one isn't always followed, but at least I'm gonna assume that it is for the most part, because wishful thinking possibly. But and the principle basically is just that we assume that if a chunk is in a stable state, no falling sand, no dial ticks or beaters which have to trigger pistons which are pushing, any just like in a stable solid state, then we are going to assume that stuff behaves normally. So basically the idea is, can we just design a sand farm so we never have to like do stuff across unloads in the chunk, so we can just deactivate the sand dispenser and get it start working again after you unload. And you're like, wow, but then what about the efficiency? Like then you have to lose 1 second out of every 45 seconds. Well, I have a plan for that, and it's still in the working, so I'm not gonna give too much spoilers. I would be really happy if it works out, but that'll be for another video. This thing is already getting way too long, so let's wrap it up right here. Thanks for watching, if you've watched all of this. I would say leave a rating, but leave a rating, like as usual. I want to know what you guys think, but frankly, if you've watched to this point, you probably find it interesting. And if you haven't watched it, I totally understand, because this is probably just technical ramble, and I now don't even know if I would find it interesting, but I just need to put this out there. This is the way my channel works. I need to create some basis as to base my other videos on my machines and my inventions and such. So this is that basis, and I think I'm gonna end this stable chunk loading series right here as it is. So thanks for watching. There's still some other videos planned, but I'm currently in my exams, so I'm studying a lot and that kind of stuff. So don't expect a lot, but I can still give it a try. Hey, anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope I will see you in another video.